Good evening and thank you for joining us for our Veterans Voices special as we honor the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country. I'm Dan Thorne. We begin with a World War II veteran in Martinez who is inspiring millions of people online with his stories of positivity. He goes by the name Papa Jake and he is about to turn 102 years old. KRON 4's Sarah Stinson has his story.
I'm just a country boy from Hope, Minnesota.
Jake Larson grew up during the Depression and survived World War II. Through it all, the 101-year-old says he's been blessed every step of the way.
I've just been the luckiest man in the world.
So much so, he published a book under that very title.
The book is just crazy. People just love it, and it's transferred now into so the people in France can enjoy this too.
Larson has also become a viral sensation, connecting with younger generations on social media apps like TikTok and YouTube.
Story time with Papa Jake.
It started during the pandemic when his granddaughter Michaela posted a TikTok of Papa Jake.
She says, "Papa, I put you on TikTok, on my TikTok." "What the hell is TikTok?" I said.
Larson says he quickly learned what it means to go viral.
He says, "Well, it took me 10 months to get 10,000 viewers. You got that in a week."
Now he has more than 800,000 followers and 9 million likes on TikTok.
Papa Jake here, and I got some news for you guys. It's just amazing. I often wonder, what am I doing here? But I've got so many things to do.
Like meeting 2 presidents, several celebrities, and professional athletes.
My man here is a World War II survivor. He's a veteran.
But what Larson cares about the most? Honoring fallen veterans.
I honor all those guys that gave their life so that I could make it through.
Each post comes with a new story, many having to do with his time serving in the war.
I joined the National Guard with my cousin Chick. In 1938, we were 15 years old. Yes, you're saying. I know, we should be 18, but we lied a little bit. Only 3 years.
Larson chronicles surviving D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge.
I am the only living one of all the people I was in the service with. The 135th Infantry Regiment, their motto is, "To the last man." And when I saw that, when I was 15 years old, I said, man, that's quite a statement. Never realizing that I would live to be the last man.
Larson ends every harrowing story with positivity and gratitude.
How come I'm kept alive? Somebody up there likes what I do.
Larson says by good fortune he returned home safely to start a family that still supports him to this day.
They're the ones that have kept me going. My grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I've got a grandson who is a grandfather already.
Larson's wife passed away more than 30 years ago. Since then, he endured a stroke and heart attack. But he calls these medical miracles because he's never felt better as he nears his 102nd birthday.
I'm sitting here telling you I can do things like this here without an acre of pain.
Papa Jake says he is eternally grateful for all his new friends on social media.
Papa Jake just loves you guys. It's been one heck of a ride, and you guys all make it so much more interesting.
And as the world changes around him, one thing remains constant for Papa Jake: his belief in luck and resilience.
Talk about a lucky man. There is a God is my favorite saying. There is a God. I'm living proof.
And he'll continue sharing this message with the world, one story at a time. I'm Sarah Stinson reporting, KRON 4 News.
The Bay Area has a new memorial on Treasure Island honoring a very specific group of veterans. It pays tribute to a group of African-American sailors unjustly punished in the aftermath of the catastrophic explosion in 1944 at Port Chicago. 50 survivors were found guilty of mutiny for refusing to go back to work in the unsafe conditions. The names of the so-called Port Chicago 50 are listed on the memorial at Panorama Park overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Crown 4's Noel Bello shares their story.
There's no question why this former naval base is called Port Chicago. The whipping winds on the shoreline tell that story well. But the story of the hundreds of servicemen who lost their lives at this site 80 years ago isn't as well known.
This story has been kind of swept under the rug.
During World War II, Navy sailors were sent to Port Chicago on the southern banks of Sassoon Bay. The base was racially segregated. Commanding officers were all white and the sailors were all black. Those sailors were tasked with loading ammunition onto Liberty ships, transporting cargo and arms to the war zones.
2,000-pound blockbusters or warheads for torpedoes, 16-inch projectors, and anything in between.
It was a task no one on the base was properly trained for.
And I told my my officers several times that one day this stuff is going to explode. And his answer was, if it does, you or I won't know anything about it.
And on July 17, 1944, that's exactly what happened. At 10:18 p.m., 2 deafening explosions ripped through the base, blowing 2 ships out of the water and instantly killing 320 men. 202 of them were black sailors.
See, like the sun rose in a few seconds. Just plain daylight. From midnight to daylight in less than a second.
In 1990, KRON 4 produced a documentary called Port Chicago Mutiny, A National Tragedy. 3 survivors shared their stories. U.S. Navy men Joseph Small, Percy Robinson, and Robert Routh Jr. For Robert, the explosion was the last thing he ever saw.
I was laying in my bed with my head resting on my arm, looking in this direction, and the explosion came from this way. So obviously you raised up and looked towards the explosion. And flying glass and concussion. My left eye was so badly lacerated that it was removed that night.
You heard the people screaming. Then you hear the second floor coming down. And the guy, my bunkmate, next bunk, he couldn't get out. So his arm fell on the floor. Someone cut his arm off. Still more people screaming, trying to get out.
For survivors like Percy Robinson, the horrors of the next hours and days were tough to recall, as they were now fully aware of the dangers of the job. Not long after the tragedy, the Navy ordered the sailors to resume their work without addressing the hazardous conditions. Joseph Small was one of 50 black sailors, eventually known as the Port Chicago 50, who refused to go back.
And he asked the question, Small, are you going back to work? And I said, no, sir. And when I answered him, somebody over in the ranks said, if Small don't go, we're not going.
Accused of conspiring together, the Navy responded by charging the group with mutiny. During the trial, it was revealed their white officers had imposed a competition at the port, betting on whose group of black seamen could load the munitions fastest. Despite the disturbing details of conditions on the base being revealed, all 50 servicemen were found guilty.
We had not even thought of the word mutiny. It had not come up.
Though they were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, the men were all released quietly about a year later. They were, however, ordered to finish their terms with the Navy. Scrutiny from the disaster and trial did eventually lay the groundwork for reform. The Navy put safety practices in place, and despite originally being the most rigidly segregated military branch, the U.S. Navy became the first to desegregate 2 years later in 1946. Today, wooden posts from the original loading docks still stand above the bay waters, marking the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial. The solemn site holds with it a sense of immense loss, but also serves as a place of reflection and a reminder to never forget the men of Port Chicago.
That it is a very inspirational story to folks in that they are inspired to learn more, that they want to know more, that they want to help get this story out.
Coming up at 102 years young, we're hearing from a Bay Area World War II veteran who still remembers his experience at the Battle of the Bulge like it was yesterday. Welcome back. 16 million Americans served in World War II. According to the National World War II Museum, there are fewer than 120,000 still alive today. One of them lives in Santa Rosa, and KRON 4's Rob Nesbitt was there for his 102nd birthday celebration.
Ready to go.
If you're looking for Paul Belanger during his birthday month, chances are you'll find him here.
The tall one here.
Big step.
Walking up the mounting block at PJB Equestrian Academy in Santa Rosa to get on his favorite horse, Murray.
Ready, Dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
These horse rides have become a birthday tradition for Belanger, and this year he's turning 102.
Happy birthday.
Okay, I'm going to step
Thank
him
you.
over.
A milestone worth celebrating. And when I asked the man with more than a century of life experience how he does it, the answer was simple.
Well, my advice is no drinking and no smoking. I never smoked all my life, and I never drank
So stay healthy.
to stay healthy. I took care of this old body, and now it's taking care of me.
Belanger has a lot to be proud of, from his long life to his 6 kids. But as you can tell from his hat, he's also extremely proud to have served his country.
Don't pull the reins yet.
One of the few World War II veterans alive today, and with a memory still sharp as ever, as he recounted the journey to Europe after his basic training in 1941.
Took our ship that we were on 10 or 11 days to get there because there was a Wolf submarine, a German Wolf submarine on our tail. So we had to shut everything off. They shut the motor off, and we couldn't even tap the side of the ship because they could hear it.
The Army veteran experienced a lot. He even fought in the Battle of the Bulge, led by the famous General George Patton, passing down many of these war stories to his daughter, Patty Belanger.
Sit up straight, Dad.
From the sadness of seeing Jewish concentration camps to the honor of no man left behind.
Driving across a field, and landmines were going off, and they could hear that one of their troop men were injured, and they'd drive across until another landmine went off. They'd throw stuff, and he'd drive exactly where the landmine went off to try to get to the people to save them out of the bunker.
Seeing a veteran wear their hat proudly is not uncommon, but it's not every day you see a hat with the words World War II. Belanger's service 80 years ago does not go unnoticed out in public.
And when they see that it's Second World War veteran, they actually give him their time. They give him a second and say, we can't thank you for the freedom that you've given us.
In Belanger's lifetime, he's been there, done that. Starting a family, collecting antique cars, horseback riding, and even a yodeling career. Combining those last 2 hobbies for his 102nd birthday, and explaining how to best honor those who have served this Veterans Day.
Well, the best way is to give them all the love you can, and be kind, be good, and help them out if you can.
Some horseback advice we can all learn from.
Good job, Dad.
In Santa Rosa, Rob Nesbitt, KRON 4 News.
Coming up, we introduce you to a group of World War II veterans who saved thousands of lives using tactics that sound like something out of a movie. Welcome back. Earlier this year, a group of soldiers known as the Ghost Army were honored at the U.S. Capitol. It's estimated that this group saved thousands of lives in Europe during World War II by using deception, including tactics that may be used in Hollywood. Nikki Burndine shares their story.
It sounds like something that belongs on the set of a movie.
Their mission was deception, and to carry it out, they used inflatable tanks and sound effects and illusion, impersonation, right on the battlefields of Europe.
Everything they did was to deceive the enemy while giving actual units time to move around.
Tanks crossing a small bridge.
Their They're known as the Ghost Army, a unit with about 1,100 soldiers that conducted 22 different deception missions, starting right after D-Day until the end of the war.
Deception is a great military tool. If you can fool the enemy about your intentions, about your location, if you can manipulate them to do what you want them to do, it's to your advantage. It can create surprise and help you out. So the Ghost Army, their mission was to impersonate other much larger American units.
These combat con artists had one goal: to save lives. But they did this with a bit of creativity.
So they had inflatable tanks and trucks and artillery and jeeps and inflatable spotter planes and anything. So they could set up a huge, presentation, if you will, on the battlefield.
They used sound deception.
They had sound trucks. These were half tracks with 500-pound speakers mounted on top that could play sounds that could go as far as 15 miles.
Radio deception.
So the enemy's listening in on the radio, and so you're sending phony radio messages and tying in with real radio networks.
And even special effects.
That involved physically impersonating the units that they're pretending to be. So they're going to put on phony shoulder patches to make it seem like they're in the 75th Infantry Division, let's say. They're going to set up fake headquarters, and they're going to have one of the guys be a fake general. I mean, I know it sounds made up, but this really happened and happened multiple times.
It sounds somewhat whimsical, but there were very real consequences.
And if you're going to understand the Ghost Army story, you want to enjoy the Hollywood aspects of it, the make-believe, the pretend, but you want to sober up pretty quickly to realize that there are people who are buried in cemeteries in Europe and in the United States who gave their lives to carry out this mission.
Rick Beyer runs the Ghost Army Legacy Project. His mission is to tell their stories.
It was all kept secret for 50 years or so after the war. This was a secret, and I got to tell you, there's still a lot of people who don't know very much about it at all.
These soldiers trained in Tennessee at Camp Forest. Today, there are just 3 living members of the Ghost Army left, and this year, they were finally honored at the Capitol, 75 years after they served. Although it's impossible to know exactly how many lives these men saved, their impact is clear.
There have been estimates that maybe 15 to 30,000 lives, and there's no way to know, right? Is that accurate? I met a guy once who was a tanker under Patton, and he had never heard of this unit. I said, I think this unit might have saved my life. And because he'd been in one of the places where they operated. And that to me was really meaningful, because you can talk numbers and say thousands here, thousands there. But here was one guy, and he was showing me pictures of his children and grandchildren and saying, well, maybe they wouldn't even have been born if it hadn't been for this unit.
Coming up, from the battlefield to the classroom, how a Marine veteran was inspired by his service to help refugee children. Welcome back. There are 2 careers that could not be more different. A Marine veteran who was deployed to Afghanistan has now gone from the Corps to the classroom. His new job? Teaching young refugees from the very country where he served. Jeremy Hubbard has this story.
Who here knows how to walk like an elephant?
Not too many grade school PE teachers.
How do we walk like an elephant?
Used to serve in the United States Marines.
Marine Corps was everything. It was my whole identity. And when I got out, I didn't know where I was going in life, so I struggled a lot.
But for John Reed, this new profession is a way to carry on the legacy of an old friend. This was Coach Reed just a few years ago in a war zone, shot in Afghanistan.
It came in right through here, through my forearm, and then came right out through the backside. That was the exit wound right there. Go back to the purple line. Go, 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 go.
But the people of that country changed his life, and so did a letter written by a Marine Corps buddy who never made it home.
I had the privilege of serving with a young man named William Stacy, and him and we went to boot camp together. We served together in our unit. He ended up passing away on that deployment. And he left a letter for his mother and his father, and he talked about wanting to make a difference in the lives of the Afghan people so that they could live a better life.
It was too late for Sergeant Stacy to do that, but Coach Reed sure could.
When I started looking for a new job this year, I saw on the page here at McElwain Elementary that you know, they were having cultural days, and I saw the Afghan flag, and for me, I was just like, holy cow, this is a full circle moment. Like, I got to get in there.
He was hired as the new elementary school gym teacher here, and he's making a difference in the lives of some refugees from Afghanistan, like Hakeem here.
He told me that he was like watching the Afghani people, so there were no fights.
And Yosef.
Yeah, he's pretty nice.
And Emron.
The teachers do fun things.
They are just some of the Afghani refugee children he helps coach every day. Not too many people know more about their homeland than Coach John.
Afghanistan is like a beautiful place, but like sometimes like there might be like wars.
They have a friend in me, they have a teacher in me, and they have somebody who's going to have their back for the rest of their life.
You never quite know where life is going to take you. And if you'd asked John Reed back on the battlefield a few years ago if he thought he'd ever wind up in a grade school gymnasium surrounded by kids, he probably would have laughed. But he has finally found a way to honor his friend who died. And besides, the people of Afghanistan changed his life for the better once. Only makes sense it would happen again.
It's so awesome to see this group of Afghanistan students be able to come to America and learn what freedom truly looks like.
In Denver, I'm Jeremy Hubbard.
Well, this has been our Crown 4 Veterans Voices special. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dan Thorne.